Hey everybody, I am Stephen Harris with KOG, that is the Kingdom of God Entrepreneur. And today on the KOG Entrepreneur Show, we are featuring Mr. Brent Clampet with Fly It Up. Hey everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Kingdom of God or KOG Entrepreneur Show. As you know, I'm Stephen Harris, your host, and I have Mr. Brent Clampet on the video feed with us. How are you doing today, Brent?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing excellently. So great to have you. Such an honor. And so all of you watching, Brent actually works doing. Please tell us a little bit about what you do. I don't want to call you a travel agent because it sounds like you have a very niche method and approach to this.
Well, I definitely do. And just so you're aware, we've kind of industry-wide, we're trying to change our appearance from travel agent to travel advisor.
Okay.
Because the industry has changed over the years. Back when we were called travel agents originally, we were literally agents of the airlines, tour companies, what have you. They completely all paid us, and it was all about working for them. Whereas we've much more in this century have moved towards where we're actually advising people much more than we are just trying to figure out how to make money with the airline, or with whatever. So. That's kind of a big difference that we've made in that regards, because we're trying to really be more aware of what the client needs more than what our vendors want. Okay. So as you said, I have a different niche. Or niche, however you want to pronounce that word. But basically for us, my company is called Fly It Up. And what we do is, what we specialize in is international airfare, particularly for humanitarian causes, corporations, and we actually sell to other travel advisors. So in the world of travel, air is the bane of most travel advisors' existence. They can't stand it. There's schedule changes, there's delays, there's, you name it, those kind of hassles happen. And the average travel advisor is unequipped really to handle all of that, along with the land package and the cruise and all the other stuff that they're dealing with the multiple people that they work with. So it's a little bit more challenging for them. So a lot of them contact me so that I can do the air for them. And then I'm also the guy who is servicing their clients when there's an issue. So that helps them in that regard. For humanitarian organizations, we have what they call a humanitarian contract, which allows us to do faith-based travel, adoptions, anything relief oriented, crisis type relief, or like when you fly down for a hurricane relief or something like that. We have contracts that allow us to discount that, or sometimes there's not a discount. In fact, I would say that about half the time the actual benefit is, say you're flying to a Caribbean country, and the airline, when you buy a normal ticket, the airline gives you absolutely no checked bags for free. And with some of our contracts will allow you to have up to 3 checked bags for free. So the price may not be lower, or it might be even slightly higher than the other, but when you factor in baggage fees, that's where that happens to come in a little better. Some of those contracts also allow us to have a lower change fee than the standard. So when, like especially with adoptions, some of the countries you go to, the timeline is very fluid. So your return is going to change, most likely, your return flight home. So they some of the airlines actually allow us to do the change for free. We do charge a fee. Obviously, we have to do all the paperwork and the finding all that. So we do charge a fee for it, but it's $50 instead of paying $350 plus any additional fare. So there's a lot of difference there for people where they can save some money. And then we also do corporate travel. So if there's a company that has people that travel in their company, we can organize all their travel, their air, their hotel, their car, much faster than an employee can do it on their own. There was a study, it's been a few years back, but they found that the average business traveler spent 7 hours just shopping for their trip. Whereas we usually can, first of all, they can send me an email saying I need to be here and here, need to be here this day and leave this day. I need a hotel and a car. And that's the extent of how much time they're spending. And then I will usually send them 2 or 3 options, and they pick from that, and then we move on. So it's a lot faster. So it saves the company a lot of money because they're not paying an employee 7 hours of their payroll to shop for airfare, flights, and airfare and car and a hotel. So that makes a lot of difference, in the bottom line for a business.
Absolutely. Wow.
So that's kind of where we sit with our what we do. We can do the cruises and the tours and all that stuff. We definitely have that ability and the knowledge, but where I find that we wind up most effective is with air. Particularly, I've been doing air only since 1994, so for about 25 years now. In fact, 25 years this month. It's September.
Wow.
So
happy anniversary. The silver anniversary.
No idea, but so at any rate, I've been doing that, like I said, for 25 years. I actually have trained several other travel agencies to do the same. I've been able to, a few years, about 20 years ago, I actually trained some of the airline employees how to read some of the contracts and do some of that stuff.
Interesting.
So it's, I've had pretty broad experience in the airline side of things.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, because most of the viewers watching, they're coming from this curiosity, a lot of them, where they're Christians who have that bug to do business. You know what I mean? Like because we know each other from the 100X family,
right? And
so it's this community we're a part of, where you have all these entrepreneurs who love Jesus and want to use their business, their product, or their service to glorify the kingdom of God.
Absolutely.
And it's amazing because usually when you hear Christian business, it's a lot of times you'll hear like MLMs and network marketing things and stuff like that. But you're the first person I've met that's specialized in the travel business. So as a Christian, what really got you into that?
Well, I would say absolutely nothing as a Christian drew me to it initially. I actually, my mom's sister, my aunt, lived in Ecuador. She had lived pretty much all over the world. Her husband worked for an oil company, and they moved him around a bit. So my parents had been down to Ecuador twice back in the days when airlines actually gave away free tickets to travel advisors. And she was up visiting us one day, I think it was over a holiday season, or over the summer or what have you. And And she asked me, so when are you going to come down and visit me? And I jokingly said, well, I'd have to be a travel agent to do that. And my dad was like, my dad became a travel agent advisor back about 5 years prior to that or so. And so I jokingly said, well, I'd have to be a travel agent to do that. And my dad was like, well, we happen to have a position open for somebody with no experience.
Wow.
So I was like, and I was in a dead end job. I hate it. So I was like, okay, well, let's check it out. And my dad almost didn't hire me. Actually, I almost didn't take the job because I, at the time, was driving our church bus on Wednesday nights. I picked up all the people who didn't have vehicles to go to our church, and my church was an hour away. I lived an hour away from the office.
I see.
So I had, and working hours were until 6 p.m. And I was like, I have to leave at 5 on Wednesdays. And he's like, I can't do that. And my dad, because he was the manager in the office. And I was like, well, then I can't have the job there because, God's more important. My church is more important. And he's like, sleep on it and call me again tomorrow. So I did. I'm like, I'm not going to change my mind, but okay. So the next day I called, and his boss, the owner of the company, actually answered the phone. And we talked a little bit, and he was like, so when are you going to come work for me? And I told him, I was like, well, I'm not, because I need to leave an hour early, and my dad said he won't hire me. And he's like, you tell Jim I said to go ahead and give you the job. So he transferred the phone to my dad, and I said, Paul said, give me the job. And I'm leaving at 5 o'clock on Wednesdays. So that was kind of how I got into the business. And then I did my training, and my very first actual sale, the first week I was on sales, I talked to a lady. I remember her name, Dottie Lucht, and she, gosh, I don't know if she's still alive or not. I think she was in her 80s back then. So if she is, she's probably not on Facebook. But she did a lot of missions.
Okay.
Travel. She did travel, so we did a missionary group. And then we did another one, and we did another one. And then it wound up in the office. Anytime that there was a Christian group that wanted to travel anywhere, everybody would transfer it to me. So because I was a Christian, and I think I was the only one in the office, it was very, very ethnic, a lot of Muslims, a lot of Buddhists, and so I mean, I was in that kind of an environment. So everyone was like sending me all the Christians, because I knew how to talk to them without offending them.
I understand.
So then when I ventured out on my own, they followed me, and that's just kind of how it's been. Okay,
that's interesting. Yeah,
that's kind of how I fell into it. It wasn't a purposeful move. It was just. And my purpose, I mean, his purpose, yes. Mine, no.
So, I remember, when you and I had a conversation before this interview, just talking about the logistical side of how much goes into these travels. Like, let's say if you have that mission group from the church, or whatever it is, you have a larger group of people, like, 15 or more people. There's just certain things that you as a travel agent would know that your average person who's not experienced planning these trips would probably make all kinds of mistakes that would really put a damper on the trip.
Right.
So you just share one of those stories.
Well, there's not only mistakes that you can make accidentally, when you're booking a larger group. Pretty much most of the airline websites, or even Expedia, Kayak, and everything, the most they book at a time is 7 to 9 passengers. So if you have, and the airlines call 10 and more a group. So if you're going to book more than 9 people, you really should look into doing a group contract. And the best way to do that is through a travel advisor, because otherwise you've got to call all the airlines individually, sit through hours and hours on hold, Trust me, I've done it. So, but the good thing when you book it as a group, you can book it now. We can usually book airfare up to roughly 330 days in advance. Okay. So you could book something now for a trip in May. And all you have to do is put down a deposit on it. Most airlines are about $100 per seat. So if you had 20 people going, you'd put $2,000 down on it. They give you what's called a utilization date, which you can reduce your group without losing the deposit by that date. Okay. And then you have a ticketing date later on, which is usually about 30 to 45 days prior to the departure of the trip.
I see.
So you're securing that price for that period of time, so that you know when you're advertising your mission group or whatever, you know what the airfare is. You're not going to have to go, well, it could be anywhere from $1,000 to $1,700. We just don't know until we get there. That's one of the things. The other thing is when you're booking online, say you were ready to buy those tickets now, and or you're too close in to do a group, because they won't let you do a group usually within 45 days, or it's instant ticketing. There's a lot of crazy there. But if you were to try and go online, a lot of times some of those websites won't show you the same flights every time, or you bought your first 7 or 9 tickets at $700, and then you go back and you're like, oh great, everyone's going to pay $700. I only have to do this 3 more times in order to get all my people in there, and then the next set are paying $1,200, and then the set after that are up to $2,000. Because you won't be able to tell what that is. You've done it. Whereas using a travel advisor, I actually have the tools where I can go in and verify the price on all of those people. Even if I don't book it as a group through the airline, I can tell you that I can do 5 people at this price, 7 people at this price, 8 people at that price, and then you have and then you just take it all and average it out and make everyone pay the same. You don't want to penalize, unless you want to penalize Pastor Joe for being last one sign up or something.
Blame the pastor.
And I'm saying there's just ways to do it that are safer and saner. Yeah. Plus, those are some of the issues that you deal with when you're doing it yourself. But the other thing is now, okay, it's day of travel. We get to the airport. My flight's been delayed. What do I do? Oh, I can go stand in that line with 300 other people. I can sit on hold with the airline for an hour and a half, or I can call my travel advisor and get an answer within 15 or 20 minutes. You know what I'm saying? Now,
I'll go with the travel advisor. And I do apologize for calling you an agent earlier.
Well, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Old habits.
Well, trust me, I use the agent term all the time too, so it's all good. But the thing is when you even when you call me and say, hey, our flight's delayed. One of my things that I do, that I advise my travelers to do that's different than other advisors, I like my traveler to call me at the very first time they say, oh, it's going to be delayed 5 minutes. I want to know then. Because then I can start looking and actually have a plan so that if it gets delayed further, I have an idea what we can do. Whereas all those other people are sitting there, oh, it's just 5 minutes. They're not calling anybody. They're not dealing with anything. They're not having a backup plan. So then when the flight gets delayed to that point where it's either delayed to where you're not going to make your connection, or they're going to cancel the flight, I've already got something in mind to do to fix it. So I may tell you, sorry, you do have to go stand in that line of 300 people, but I may have already fixed it in your reservation. The airline just has to do the exchange on their side. Otherwise, we have to charge you ungodly amounts of money, because the airlines consider that a last minute change as voluntary, and we don't want to do that. So I mean, unfortunately, you may have to go in that line. But if I've already told you in advance, what we can do. And sometimes when those flights are delayed, even though they're still saying, oh, it's going to go, if we know that it's going to cause a problem and there's another flight in between that I can get you on, sometimes the airline will let you take that flight instead of waiting for your flight that's been delayed, now has been delayed past that flight. So that's another thing that people don't know, they don't realize. And so that's another big area that I help people in, that they're not aware of. They don't know the ins and outs. Plus, they don't have the tools. The internet shows you what they want to sell. Kayak, Expedia, Travelocity, all of these, they have contracts with all these airlines. They make money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are rules that Congress has tried to put out, and that the DOT, and DOJ and everybody's put out, saying that you're not supposed to show favoritism or anything like that. But I'm sorry. Having done some comparison shopping between what I see in my computer and what I see on there, I know that there are some discrepancies, shall we say, in that.
We might have to have you go before Congress to testify about that for them to take you seriously.
I'd rather avoid that if possible. Congress isn't a very friendly place these days. Anyway, I do actually. I'm also part of ASTA, which is the American Society of Travel Advisors, and we actually do go to Congress annually and advocate on behalf of our of our businesses and our travelers. So that's something I'm actually involved in. So I know how Congress works a little bit.
Okay, that's awesome.
So it's not necessarily a horrible thing, but it's not where I want to be spending a lot of time.
Okay. Well, we're getting towards the end of the show here. So it's interesting to hear you had this experience, the way you described it, about you just kind of had that epiphany one day regarding your aunt being, what was it, Ecuador you said?
She was in Ecuador at the time.
Ecuador, yeah. And I love watching Shark Tank, and you hear people run into these inconvenient situations and they have a business idea. So while you're telling that, that's what it reminded me of.
Absolutely.
But you're one. You love Jesus. You're a Kingdom of God entrepreneur, and you've taken what is in your heart to do and you run with it. What advice would you give to our viewers who also have that business in them, but they just haven't quite stepped out? What would you share with them?
Do it afraid, as Joyce Myers would say. Do it afraid. I had no idea how it was going to work. I had no idea. When I left the company I worked for, I asked him if I could work from home. He said no. I said fine. I quit. Basically, I was on blood pressure medicine at that point in my 30s, and they within 6 months of quitting there and actually opening my own business, I was taken off of the blood pressure medication.
All right.
Because I didn't have that pressure at the work that I had, and I was making more money and having more fun in life in general.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So take the leap, step out, do it, get people around you who can support you. I didn't have a lot of people that were supporting me in my business, but I definitely had a really strong support group at church in prayer, in the regards of prayer. So I just had people pray for me mostly, and I didn't really talk about business because they didn't understand it or didn't want to have anything to do with it. You know what I'm saying? But my then pastor was actually quite the entrepreneur, and he had several other entrepreneurs in his family, so he understood it. So it was there was some consolidation or consolation there. So that helped. I guess something I didn't say earlier too is not only when people use us, are we helping them with that, but we have contracts that actually can help us discount airfare. There was recently for one of the 100 extras, I did a trip that she was trying to go on with a friend. It was a mission trip. And I beat the internet by $800. I saved her $800 off of what she was seeing, and what she was seeing wasn't as good a connection, and it didn't match up with her friend and all this other stuff. So that's just where we are. I mean, we have, like I said, we just have the tools that aren't necessarily on the internet, and people don't they just don't have, they're not equipped with those tools. You know what I'm saying? And it's for good reason, because it's costly. It's not cheap to be in business, at least in my industry. I mean, some businesses are, you start with $100 and you're fine. So yeah, it just, I would say just step out and do what you need to do to get it going. If you are stepping out into business and you are a believer and you want to have your business set up in a godly fashion, definitely join 100X if you're not a part of it already. I mean, there is so much information, so much help available within that family, within that community, that if I had 100X 18 years ago when I went out on my own, I would probably have like multiple locations by now and so much more. I mean, it's just my eyes have been opened to so much over just the past year that I've been involved with them. So it's so my mindset has changed. You know, some of the fears that I didn't even realize were fears are gone. Yeah. So there's just a lot of things like that. So I would say definitely get in a group like that if you can at all.
Absolutely. All right. And so if our viewers want to get in touch with you, they go to Brent, BRENT, at flyitup.com, or Brent at flyitup.com. And of course, we'll have it on the screen for them. And of course, that's the best way to get in touch with you, right?
Absolutely. At this time, yes. We don't have a website. I find that for air, it's more confusing than anything else.
Okay. No problem. All right. Well, it's been great to have you. Thanks for sharing. And I look forward to seeing everything that comes in the next few years and you having 100 locations.
Hey, that'd be amazing. Thanks, Stephen.
All right. Thanks.